Hey guys, I'm coming to you from my dimly lit upstairs room to talk to you about text structure. So, what is it and why do authors use different text structures? Text structure just means the organization system that an author uses to add to the meaning of their writing. Structures can be used within paragraphs or within larger texts. So you can look at a small paragraph and the structure an author uses there, or you can consider the structure of the whole piece. So these are some common types of structure that we'll go over. There are more, but these are some of the most common. So first, there's cause and effect. So cause and effect shows the relationship between an event and the consequences. Time order and chronology. This just means the plot events move in a certain order. So it could be sequential, which just means one after the other, or it could involve flashbacks where things don't go in order. So you kind of are in one time period and then flash back to a previous time. And also foreshadowing, where you're seeing a hint of something that might come that hasn't happened yet. So sometimes timelines can move in order, and sometimes they can jump around a little bit. And how an author chooses to do that can be important. Compare and contrast. This shows similarities and differences between objects, characters, actions, or ideas. So again, you're just comparing or contrasting, showing similarities and differences in some way in the writing. Problem and solution. This means there's like a challenge of some sort or an obstacle that's introduced, and then a solution or a series of solutions is proposed to that problem. Sequence or process. This means there's a specific order of plot events or instructions that should be followed. This is different than the time or chronology because it's not just about the order of plot events that are being moved around, but in this case, there's a very specific order that has to be followed. So you could think of this in a couple ways. In literature, it's things like the hero's journey, right? So like we talked about how the hero's journey has the same path, and those pieces must always be done in that way. That's what makes it the hero's journey, that kind of archetypical hero's journey. Or you could think of it like an informational text. Maybe there's instructions for something and you need to follow them in a certain order. So, like directions on how to make something, or something that maybe you're like taking something apart and you want to see what all the pieces are, and they have to get put back together in a certain way. Those are all things that would be like sequence or process structures because they have to be done in that order. And finally, investigation. This just means there's a question that's being posed and then evidence is being gathered to come up with an answer. So the authors made a very clear question up front and then kind of gather this evidence to come up with an answer of some sort to that question. So these are some of the most common types of structure. In Haroun and the Sea of Stories, we can see that sequence or process because we can see that hero's journey. So like we talked about before, that's a very clear order of events that have to happen in that order. That's what makes it the hero's journey. So it has to be in that sequence. In The Girl Who Smiled Beads, we can see that the authors are using this time order or chronology structure because we have the flashbacks, right? So we're in 1994, then we're in 2000, then we're back to 1994, then we're in 2001. So we're kind of moving through more modern times when Clementine's in the US, but then we also are flashing back to her time in Rwanda. So it goes back and forth. So that choice of chronology where it's not sequential, it's not going in order from like, here's where the war first started all the way up to present day. We're kind of jumping back and forth. That's very specifically done in this book by these authors. So the question here is, why is the structure important, right? So authors are choosing these specific structures to convey their meanings. So for example, in The Girl Who Smiled Beads, that chronology has been very specifically chosen. You can also think about it like this. Like you're not going to necessarily like mix these structures up and use them kind of willy-nilly because you wouldn't write a recipe for cookies with a flashback in the middle. So that wouldn't make any sense. So you want to make sure that you're thinking about like, why did the author use this particular structure for this particular text? And structure can help us understand what an author feels is important. It can help us understand how a character grows or changes, or even what the big ideas and themes are in a text. So structure can help us understand all of these other things, which is why it is important. So as you read, you can ask yourself these two questions. What structure does an author use? And why is the author using this particular structure? So these are the ways to ask yourself about structure so you can think about the big ideas that might connect to that or the reasons behind why an author is making these choices. So again, text structure is really embedded in everything that we read. So thinking about what is that structure and why is it being used can really help us analyze a text at a deeper level. All right. Thanks, guys.